Hi, it's Sandy Parker, and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. Today we're going to use some embossing folders and do this technique. I had a little problem with some cards I mailed out. I sent one that was supposed to go to Debbie. I sent to Marie, and the one for Marie went to Debbie. At least that's what I hope. They were very similar. The cards were very similar, and I screwed that up. I am so sorry, but you know, these things happen to me. So I told Debbie I was going to try this technique today, and I'm using the stamp set from, I think it's Hero Arts. Could be Hampton Arts. I always get those two mixed up. It's Hero Arts, and it's called Hello, and it has this nice hello that also has a die in it, and it says hello, sending you hugs. And then I use this Cuttlebug folder called Pomegranate Paisley, and I'm going to show you how I made that in this video, and show you, well, I'm not showing you this card, but I'm showing you the whole technique. I hope you'll stay tuned for that. Today we're going to be playing with embossing folders and coloring them with inks, and before you do this, I would recommend you put a piece of paper in your embossing folder and run it through to see how it, like, if the front is the part that pushes down the most. Okay, I'll show you. If you put it in so it goes like this, if the raised part is on that side, so you have to put your paper, your coloring in on that side of your embossing folder. I hope that makes sense. You want your coloring to be all on one side of your embossing folder, not both sides, and you're going to make sure it's on the side that's raised, like I said, okay? So when we do this, that's how we're going to play it. So I'm going to use two colors of inks, Simon Says Stamp Willow and Hero Arts Forever Green. Now, I want to tell you one more thing about this. The folder I'm using is from Couture Creations. It's called Magical. That number 27 is how I keep track of it in a book I have my embossing folders in, but I don't know where I got this. It's been around a long time, trust me, and I'm sure, as in all things, if you can't find it in the real world, you can find it on eBay. We're going to very gently go across the front of the embossing folder, and I'm going to go across the whole front. This is with the lighter tone of ink, and we're going to just make sure we really rub it well with this ink. And I'm not pressing down at all. I'm just rubbing it back and forth. I'm just making sure that the whole background is covered with ink. And if you have a spot where you think it's not inky, just keep, rubbing it around. You see that? You should be able to look through it. I'm going to go around it one more time so it's all really wet. Then when you put your paper in it, you're going to want to kind of fold it, start folding it. You're going to put it in the middle of the fold and then gently lay it down so that it's in there, and don't move it. From this point on, don't move it. Let me go to my die cutting machine and I'll be right back. So we're going to take it out of the machine and out of our embossing folder, and we're done with our embossing folder. Luckily, that little piece of fuzz was still in there. Why? I don't know. And then, of course, it colored it a little bit. But I'm not going to worry about that. We can trim off the edges. We can clean up anything that we don't like. Right now, it's going to be really splotchy because that's what happens with these kinds of inks. But it should flatten out as time goes on. Now, the next thing we're going to do is, well, first I want to wipe off my embossing folder just because I don't like to leave them with ink on them when they're not in use. That ought to do it. Okay, so now I'm going to take the darker ink. Now, we're not going to use the embossing folder anymore. We're just going to use this. Now, this is the tricky part, and this is the part that if you have issues with your hands and wrists, that you're going to want to be most careful about, and that is you're going to want to go across this very gently with the darker ink, and you're going to just gently cover that ink pad, and hopefully the pad you're using has got a lot of ink on it, or a good amount of ink, so that we can get this dual tone. And you're just going to keep rubbing across. If you like it where it's partially inked, that's okay, you can do that. You just want to keep it flat across it. You don't want to tip it. When you get to the edges, don't let the pad go off the edge, because if you do, it's going to tip enough that you're not going to have any you're not going to be able to keep it flat. Now you can see right here, I got it a little bit into the green. We could put our sentiment there. We could do something. We'll figure something out there. Now, let's talk about the areas that I didn't get enough ink on. Those we can fix with a couple of different methods, and I'm going to show you two different kinds of micro brushes. I bought both of mine on AliExpress. I know a lot of people don't like AliExpress, but for things like this, I think it's perfectly fine to be shopping there. It's inexpensive, and you can find these kinds of things in the nail section. Now, these are micro brushes, but they have a little foam tip on the end of them, and you get 100 of them for under $2. I'm going to pull one out for you. And you can see, if you have a Fantastic, it's very similar to that. Then the other type of micro brush that I have, and I've shown this in a few videos, is this, sorry, when you know when I want to get one out, it won't come out. Okay. Comes in a really nice container, and it has more of a fuzzy tip. Let me hold them both up as close as I can so you can see them. I'm sorry, I have green ink on me. You see the difference? This one, the tip is very firm, but it's foam, and this one is more like fuzz. Hope you can see that. Okay, so what I like to do is, when I didn't get the ink to transfer in a spot that I need, I'm going to use one of my two brushes, and I'm going to start out with the little foamy one, fuzzy one. Sorry, the little fuzzy one. And I'm just going to basically paint the areas that didn't end up with enough ink on them. And this way, you're going to have a more consistent image. It's hard to do this and get every single thing colored, especially when you're using an embossing folder like this one that has so many intricate little lines in it. I don't know if you can see the little dashes that are on this, but it has some very intricate, it's an intricate pattern. Okay, that's one method. Then the other way of doing it is taking this brush, and I'm kind of turning it, hopefully you can see this, I'm turning it on its side so it gets a lot of ink on it. And then I'm going to do the same thing, only I'm going to, again, turn it on its side a little bit so that we get more of its color to come off. This is much better for teeny tiny little areas like these stems that you really are going to struggle with, or these little dashes that you want to make sure that you get inked. And I'm going to go back to the other one. You can use a paintbrush. You can use basically any tool that you would normally use for coloring with to do this. Because these are dye-based inks, they'll wash off of everything. They're kind of they're not gonna damage your background. Well, I can go back with the pad. Let's try that area again. I didn't really want to do that if I could avoid it because of that spot that already had gotten ink on it. Now, I saw Lindsay the Frugal Crafter do this, and when she did it, she used a brayer, and although it looked like that was a great system, for me, I thought I would try this way first. I like it pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, of course, that area there is weird. And then I have a little spot right there that didn't accept any ink, so I'm going to get another one of my purple pieces out, hopefully, if it will play with me. And I don't feel bad using one of these or two of these or three for a project when each one is maybe a couple cents, you know, to buy. And I mean, how many things in our crafty stash do we have that's that inexpensive? Right in here. It just didn't accept the ink. So that's those. Now my next step is to make the sentiment on it, and I think what I'm going to do is do an emboss, resist, and come up with a sentiment from, I gotta find it. It's laying right here. It's right here. Oh, there it is. If you could see my work area, it's so pathetic. I'm going to use this Impression Obsession. It's called Wishes. It's got the word wishes and then the wishes die and then get well. I have a lot of friends who have the flu right now, and I thought that'd be nice to just say get well wishes or warm wishes, or just I'm going with get well wishes on this one, and I'm going to use it on a piece of the same kind of paper that I had that was cut off when I trimmed this piece down. This was Canson XL watercolor paper, and I cut it down. I cut 2 pieces of it down so that it would work for this project. I actually cut 1 piece down. I made that up. I cut 1 piece down and I made it so that each piece would be an A2 size, which, as you know, is 5.5 by 4 1/4 inches. I put my Get Well wishes, I put that right inside, but first I'm going to go over that with my pouch. I'm going to use clear embossing powder, but I'm going to stamp it with this Willow. And when you use dye-based inks and you stamp on with embossing powder, you need to do this quickly because dye-based inks will dry really fast. And we don't want this to dry fast, so I'm gonna stamp it several times because I really want to get this impression on here. And then I like to rub across mine with a cloth because it helps with the friction that's on, when you rub it with your hand. It makes it so it doesn't, it just doesn't hurt as bad, I guess, as the difference. Let's see if I want to do it one more time. Maybe one more time. I know most of you are thinking why she needed to do it this many times, but I am a little bit obsessive about this. And I'm going to keep the lid shut while I put my ink lid back on because I want to make sure that this is still wet when I pour my powder on it. Get this out. Woo! It's upside down now. My powder on. Hopefully it's still wet. It should be because I did so much inking. It should hopefully grab onto that powder. I'll just dump some of it in and some of it onto my paper. This Nouveau clear embossing powder, so far I do like the powder, but I don't like that bottle. And I probably would have put it into another container, but it's such a small amount, I'm waiting for a second bottle to come so that I can put it in a container that would hold on, that I could put it in. Now I'm going to heat up my tool because that makes this process go much faster, and it also helps make sure that your paper doesn't warp. This time what we're going to do, we're doing the same technique as we did with the embossed folder, only this time we're going to use our ink, our darker green ink, to go over the Get Well wishes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do exactly what I did with the embossing folders. I'm going to go over this image with my darker ink, and I know you're freaking out right now going, you just ruined that, but I hope, trust me when I say I hope, I should be able to fix this. Okay, I'm just making sure that everything is well inked. Then I'm going to put a little bit more of the dark ink down here because I wiped some of it off, and I didn't really want to. Okay, and then I'll go back with my cloth, and I'm just going to try and just wipe off the embossed words like that. Okay, so that's where we stand so far. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get a base to put these on. This is a Gina K green. That's kind of pretty. I think I'm going to go with that. I'm cutting my paper to 5.5 inches. It's a full sheet of paper. I'm just going to cut it in half like that. Then you're going to get your score tool, and you're not going to see this because I'm going to do it on my lap because we don't have room for all this stuff. And I'm going to score it on the long side at 4 1/4. That makes it a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card. So there's that. Then I'm leaving that. I'm leaving my cutting my paper trimmer out because I want to be able to trim down these and make them look the way I want them to. So let's cut those, I think, right about there. Looks about right. We'll use this, and then if we need to cut it down more, we will. But for now, we're gonna hopefully not do it. Now let's see. This is that much. Takes it down to 5 1/4, and then on the right side, I'm just gonna trim off a little bit, and then I'm gonna trim off a little bit on the other side. It looks pretty good. Now, because I did this like that, what we can do is now we can trim this down so it fits across this card. This would make it the full width of the card. Let's see what it looks like if we do it that way. Now, when you're going to do something like this, where you're using an embossed folder, this is going to have a lot of unevenness in the back. So to apply it to your card, you are going to want to use some really thick adhesive. I'm going to try this ATG gun that I absolutely hate because I can't see it where the tape is going. The next thing I'm going to do, just to ensure that my ink stays in place, is I'm going to get some wet ink, and I'm going to put that on there too. That way we're absolutely certain we're not going to have anything come off. I got this at a craft show called Easy Paper Glue. It doesn't work very well, but as a secondary glue, I think it's going to be fine. I just want to make sure that I don't have anything come off. And when you do that, it gives you the ability to kind of wiggle it around, and that makes me happy when I can do that. And then, of course, we have this that can go across the top. Now, what I was telling you about was, if you wanted to, you could make another strip go across the bottom and the top of this, because we have those two strips, and I do think I'm going to do that because it looks really good. I'm going to cut a little bit more off the top, though, because I want there to be enough room for my little strips. And then we can cut our little strips to match too. So first thing, I'm going to get the sentiment put down. Woo! Attached. Okay. And then again, I'm going to put a little wet glue on here just because I didn't get the edges. That's what happens when you're left-handed and use it. When you can't get the edges because you can't tell where the tape is going to come down on it. And I'm going to put that right there. Or should I put it up on foam? I don't think I'm going to put it up on foam. I think I'm just going to do this because I want to put those two strips on. And while I'm cutting my strips down, I'm going to flip this over and put something on it to hold that in place. If you've never used a Xyron before, all it is a little plastic tool that's got adhesive in it, and it's so simple to use. See this little arrow right here that points down? You're going to put your paper in right side up like that, and I'm going to put them close together, or not close together, And then you want to kind of stick your thumb in there to hold them apart from each other, because you don't want them to get too close to each other. And I don't want it to go over there either. And you just keep pulling until it comes out the other end like that. Then you're going to rub it really well because you want the adhesive to adhere to the back. Then you just grab the front paper. This front paper is super sticky, so I just kind of do that and try and get it off my hands as quickly as possible before I end up with it all over me. Okay, you can see now that one is wider than the other. Let's see if when we put it on here we can make sure that it doesn't, that you can't tell. If you can tell that it's different, then we'll rethink it in a second. I'm trying to make sure that that stays in place. I can just do one strip below it. That might make sense. It kind of looks cool like that. Let me get my stamp. Now you could put a lighter colored paper in the inside to make sure that someone can read, because it, you know, it is a darker green, but I don't think I'm going to do that. Made for you by Sandy Parker. I did put on the last couple videos how to buy that stamp because people asked me how, you know, where I got it, and it's kind of involved, but I did tell you in the last two videos where to get it. And let's get an envelope. I made this envelope at Christmas time with some of my Christmas paper, and although it kind of clashes, it still kind of makes me happy, so I think we're going to go with that. And as for decorating the outside of it, okay, we're going to get our greens out that we just used. And I'm going to start with my light colored one. That's the Simon Says Stamp Willow. And I have this, it's called a little pumpkin leaf. I thought since there were so many leaves on this background that we would just do some leaves. And the bottom of it, the bottom of the leaf is lined up with this little line, so if you keep that towards you, you know exactly where you kind of stand in your stamping. Then I'm going to use the darker one. Oh no, I want to do the front with one of those. Then I'm going to take the darker green . I'm just going to stamp in between. And there we have it. We have our back and our front, and here's our card. I hope you enjoyed this, that you give it a thumbs up, and click that subscribe button down in the bottom corner if you haven't already, and tell your friends about me on social media because you know I love that, and thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.